What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. As always, I'm the Grim Narrator, and today, as if you couldn't tell from, what else is going on the screen, we're getting into r/NoSleep. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into this. Is the very first fucking thing on r/NoSleep. 6 hours ago, by the user Mr. Frontenac. I don't fucking know. 75 seconds. The last time I asked my wife how much longer she'd be in the shower, it's what she said. It wasn't just over a minute or a little bit. It was exactly 75 seconds because my wife was a very precise person. Punctual. On time. She wouldn't be there in 10. She'd be there in 8.5 minutes. She was a woman who can count the time she'd been late on one hand and still loses sleep over it. I can completely relate to that, actually. I realize I'm giving the wrong impression. My wife, Kathleen, is by no means crazy. She simply has a better sense of time than most and likes to show it off. She doesn't even have a watch. A game of hours is when I'll ask her the hour and she'll say the time while only ever being off by a few minutes. Can't relate. So when she told the doctors that I was unconscious for a minute or two, I was a little shocked. I knew she was mad at me then. The hospital's policy is to keep you for at least one night if you lose consciousness for any amount of time, longer than 30 seconds, and it was a 3-day minimum. They were more concerned about my lapse of memories surrounding the moment when I hit my head. I know I was fixing the basement stairs. I remembered a brief jolt of panic as I fell, knowing my skull would slap against the stone floor. That was it. I was apparently awake and talking by the time the paramedics arrived, but that memory is gone. Only now my short-term memory is healing. I can remember the hospital cafeteria slop I was fed for dinner last night. I remember when my boss came to drop off a 6-pack of beer disguised in resealed richer root beer bottles. I don't know what that is, but I know what root beer is, so. But most of my thoughts were on my daughter. The hospital made me think of her, or what we had done to her. I had set a set of adorable, identical twins, and life was on its way to a fairy tale until Sophia, the oldest by 4 minutes and 37 seconds, started getting sick. And I don't mean physical, visible illness. It sounds so selfish, but I would have preferred cancer, disease, something that could be seen. But the sickness was in her head, and I believe what was almost as bad as Sophia being sick herself was the hate from friends and family. People don't believe that a child could be depressed or paranoid or downright disturbed all on their own. It had to be us. There was an unsaid assumption that if a kid was fucked up before puberty, it was the parents' fault. It had to be the nurture because nature took care of kids just fine. Kathleen's lost some friends who accused me of abuse. We had CPS called on us multiple times. We didn't know what to do. We were just a couple of kids ourselves who decided to make a little human being. We were out of our depth. I couldn't stomach the trips to the clinics. Kathleen was used to cleaning chemical stench and fluorescent strobe of hospital hallways. She said that before her sister, Cindy, lost her fight to a blood disease, her family was always in and out of every kind of medical institution, Western or not, and non. I don't know if that means something. Non-Western? Anyway, I suppose I have to paint a picture so you can understand why parents would give up on their child. I don't want to be the bad guy here. Sophia liked to torture animals, set things on fire, stare at her mom and I as we slept. Classic serial killer shit. Her identical twin Rachel was normal. We tried expensive child therapy that left bills we couldn't pay. Kathleen couldn't stand the price, but I wanted it to be expensive. I wanted to be able to look myself in the mirror and say my wife and I went into debt to try to help our little girl. We did everything. And when nothing worked and Sophia killed the neighbor's Newfie by using a punji stick trap. Someone explain that to me. She proudly told us was perfected by the Viet Cong and banned by the Geneva Convention. We sent her away. I knew this would happen, Kathleen sobbed in the passenger seat after we dropped Sophia at the Rainbow River Young Adult and Child Inpatient Psychiatric Treatment Center. Holy fucking shit, that's a long name. A mouthful of euphemism for insane asylum. Fair. Kathleen couldn't be consoled. She kept crying while my hand bobbed helplessly on her shoulder. Ever since they were babies, the day they were born, I knew it would always be this way. I knew we'd be here. I thought she was just being hard on herself. I didn't even think to ask how she could possibly know. There's nothing we could have done different, I said. That's not true. She sniffed up her snot and wiped her eyes. We never had to have kids in the first place. Dramatic. This is the part that's personal. A part that I know most parents would omit. But when we got home, I was 100 pounds lighter. Sophia was gone. And as far as I was concerned, when people asked, I had one daughter. We were a 3-person family now, and even our Christmas card would suggest so. We were one of those families with a dark secret. One that new friends would never learn, no matter how close they got to us. Too embarrassing to ever tell. Too easy to just forget. A daughter locked away. After a while, I really did begin to forget about her. Since Rachel and Sophia were identical, it wasn't hard to picture I had just one kid. There was no face I had to forget. If I saw Sophia in my dreams, it was easy to lie to myself and say it was Rachel. The only time my fantasy crumbled was when Rachel would ask about her. But as time went on, she asked less and less. Life was a fairy tale again, although with a little more of a dark Disney-esque twist. That was 2 years before I fell down the stairs, and to be honest, I hadn't gone to see Sophia since. 3 days later, I got home from the hospital, and my life was the same as it was there, just with less linoleum. I was propped up in bed with the curtains drawn and the lights dimmed. Kathleen and Rachel had both been rather quiet since I woke up in the hospital bed. My girls were noisy. They had loud laughs and perhaps obnoxious voices if you didn't love them. But the doctors recommended no loud noises, so I was stuck in this subdued world for another couple of weeks. The first day Kathleen came in, she set my food tray on the bedside table. I know it's against protocol, honey, but can you please just give me a hearty laugh? Hell, a yell. Just something other than silence, I said. She tilted her head but didn't smile. You know I can't do that, she nearly whispered. You had a brain bleed. I paused and gently grabbed her wrist. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Where's your ring? She withdrew her hand from my grasp and smiled sadly. What? I nearly yelled as she walked toward the door. Kathleen, what happened when I fell? What did I do? Suddenly I was stricken with guilt. Did I do something awful that I couldn't remember? Kathleen, I called, but she said nothing and closed the bedroom door gently behind her. Suddenly I was afraid. Something was wrong. Even if she wasn't mad at me, Kathleen being able to keep quiet easily made sense. She was an adult and would take the doctor's orders seriously, but Rachel, it seemed easy for Rachel too. She didn't need any reminders to keep her voice down or play quieter. She seemed, for the first time in her life, disturbed, just like her sister. That was the only time I could move around. Light in nearly any amount still made my brain throb. When it was well past dark, Kathleen still hadn't come up yet, and I figured she was watching TV in the basement so she wouldn't bug me. Or maybe she was avoiding me. I couldn't tell. I went to the kitchen and made myself some food. Kathleen also hadn't been putting her usual amount of love into my meals. They were hastily tossed together. I jumped when I reached the stairs. Rachel was standing on the landing, staring at me. "Hey, honey," I swallowed my spit nervously. I was afraid of the little girl. My little girl. But I thought maybe I was right to because she didn't respond the right way. "Rachel?" "Daddy," she paused. "I think there's something wrong with Mommy." I turned on the hall light to better look at my daughter. When Rachel was just a toddler, she clipped her cheek on the corner of a coffee table. It was a surprisingly nasty gash, one that I actually hoped would leave a scar. Being a dad is difficult enough, and I wanted something other than hairstyles to tell my girls apart. But Rachel had been so young it healed completely. She and her sister were truly identical. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" "Lots of things." She was swaying her shoulders now. "She said I need to come with her to work tomorrow." That made sense. Some sense. Rachel didn't have school the next day. It was parent-teacher conferences, and I couldn't look after her myself. "Well, she's your mother, honey. You have to listen to her. Why don't you go back to bed? It's late. We'll talk about it in the morning." Rachel walked up the rest of the stairs toward her room, and I gave her an embarrassingly wide berth. She stood in her doorway and stared at me. She was waiting for me to tell her I loved her, surely. But I just bit my tongue, looking her over, and she said nothing, not even good night, and simply closed her door. I freeze this frame every day now. I play it back in my brain again and again. Rachel staring at me from the doorway, waiting. I didn't know it then. It was subtle the way sinister things are. But I'm certain that it was the worst moment of my life. The next day I woke up early and found Kathleen's side of the bed still empty, cold, the bedding not even pulled back. It was an overcast day, but even if it were sunshine and clear skies, I knew I had to get out of bed. I knew something was wrong. Kathleen was not the type to sleep on the couch. I dialed Sophia's treatment center and was greeted with the kind cadence of receptionist who listens to panicked parents day in and day out. "Hello, this may seem like a weird question, but I'm Sophia Davis's father. I'm wondering if she's there now or if she's suddenly been acting different." She confirmed my identity with my number and clicked her tongue against her teeth. "Just a second, sir." Hold music, elevator music, saucy saxophones were the soundtrack of my life falling apart. It wasn't going to be John Williams. That's just not how life works. A reality cruelly unfolds. It likes to play the little jokes, like to laugh along to your pain. Fuck, that screwed me up. Your life is falling apart. Listen to the sax riff. I like that. "Sir, your daughter is fine. Her behavior the last few weeks has been reported as normal." "Are you sure it's her?" "You see, she has a sister." "Yes, we're certain it's Sophia." "Thank you," I said quickly and hung up. I went outside, stumbling into the backyard to see if Kathleen's car was gone. But something caught my eye in the grass. It was my wife's phone, stone cold and wet with dew. It was dead, and I walked inside quickly to charge it. There would be something on there that would tell me what's going on. Text to her best friend, Google searches. But it was nothing like that. When it turned on, she had dozens of missed calls and texts. 100 notifications. Her phone had been off for days. 4 days exactly. I was able to figure out from the age of the oldest notification. The texts were concerning: an angry boss, her friends thinking that she was mad at them. But the voicemails. There were several, all from a psychiatric center. A Dr. Renner had left voicemail after voicemail. I yanked the phone from the charger and placed it where I had space in the backyard to listen to them. I knew then why my wife was prophetic about Sophia's fate. Why she was so sure ever since our girls were born that Sophia would end up in the psych center. I dropped the phone back to the grass. The side door to the garage was slightly ajar, but I already had a feeling of what was inside. I pushed the door open, and lying in a circle of dried blood was my wife. Wedding ring shining on her finger. From the flies and stench, I knew she'd been dead for days. My wife was there, dead. That means I sent Rachel with her. I told her to listen to her mom. I ignored my daughter's gut and didn't even tell her goodnight. I killed my girl with those words. I can't pretend I didn't. Because that wasn't her mother. Kathleen's sister Cindy is alive, and they're twins. Identical. Just like my daughters. As it turns out, Cindy likes to torture and kill things too. And she escaped from her asylum just 4 days ago. That's cute, because well, that was the end of the story. But I, having recently found out about these no sleep forums, posts, what have you, I know that this comment's nonsense. Your wife could have at least told you it ran in the family. Oh my god, I'm sorry for your loss. I don't think you understand that no sleep is like made up stories. I mean, give up your 5p. I want to see if this, who the hell was this? I want to see if they actually posted and it's like, you know, this is a fucking story, right? Mr. Frontenac. See if we can find this guy. Oh, I almost wish I could blame her, but after having Sophia, I understand. Oh, he's playing into it. The police are putting out an APB already. If you're in southern Ohio, please look out for an Amber Alert. 23 minutes ago. Wait. What the fuck is this? Hold the phone. Hold the phone. Either this is like the greatest nonsense thing ever, or this is real. What the fuck was her name? Something Davis. Sophia Davis in Ohio. Hold on, let's see here. Was it Sophia? No, Sophia Davis was the one they committed. Hold on. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna. I want to know. God damn it. I forgot the wife's name. Wife Kathleen. Kathleen Davis. Murder? No. No. I don't know. I don't immediately see anything, so I'm still going with horse shit. I may investigate further and update, but I don't fucking know. It's fine though. I got a little off off subject because I was curious with all the weird fucking posts of people believing that was legitimate. Which I still don't. Sounds like horse shit. Massive amounts of horse shit. How long is this? Oh, God. Fine. 18 hours ago by Jam Franz. I'm assuming is the user's pronunciation name. You don't have to go anywhere to find the most terrifying place in my town. It comes to you. Hooker's pants? Sorry. In my town, the most dangerous place is the abandoned Macy's department store. The basement, to be more precise. It's not easy to find, but people still manage to, mostly by accident. You are perfectly safe as long as at least one of your feet stays on the stairs. What? You're supposed to just go back up, and eventually it'll move on. I'm guessing it's a ghost. I'm not sure how many people have found it. Lots of people claim to, but it's hard to verify. Those that do take both feet off the stairs, well, no one hears from them to find out what comes next. Most of them probably end up listed as a missing person. That's why I'm writing this. I want people to know what happened to my sister and my friends. And if I can't figure out something out soon, to me too? What? I want to share what it's really truly like down here. I think I understand. I think they're trying to say that this shit's going on at this exact moment. Like they're fucking typing this fucking story on Reddit while they're in the middle of this potentially life or death situation where people have just fucking disappeared. Fine. I know. It doesn't sound that bad. A basement full of abandoned clothes and items with no windows. So the darkness is only broken up by the smatterings or flickerings of lights, where if you listen closely enough, you'll hear another set of quiet footsteps, always just behind you. But trust me, it's the most terrifying place I've ever been. And I'd give literally anything to leave. The store sprawls on for what must be miles. It's overwhelming in its vastness, yet not an inch of it is safe. Something pursues you down here. Or maybe even multiple somethings, it's hard to tell. I feel like someone just found out about the back rooms and they're making their own weird story off of it. I can guess what you're thinking. A department store that people disappear into? That'd be shut down in an instant. Yes, you're right. And it was. Back in the early 2000s. It used to just be a normal store. People stopped there for years without incident, but then something changed. No one is quite sure what caused it, but one day, no one stepped into the basement. Never came out. Once it became apparent that there was no hope in saving those that were lost, the whole place was eventually torn down. As you can probably guess, that's not where the story ends. The basement still manages to claim people. The only difference now is that you don't go downtown to where the old Macy's used to be and take the escalator to get there. What the fuck is this person saying? Anyway, now, at least in my town, any escalator, elevator, or set of stairs you take down could bring you down here instead of where you were intending to go. It doesn't matter where you are, or where they usually lead. One of my classmates once claimed that he was just going downstairs in his house, But upon reaching the last step before the bottom, instead of his living room, he was staring into the basement of the store. I believed him too, because his story lacked the bravado of others I've heard. You could tell he was deeply afraid. He also mentioned things that I now know to be true from my own experience. Like the smell of old and decaying things, the odd still breeze that emerges like a sigh from deep within the windowless store. There are some steps you can take to increase your odds of finding the place, but I'm not going to share those here. I don't need that on my conscience. Do it, pussy. I'll do it. For my entire life, it's just been a given that you always have to be vigilant and pay close attention to where you are. Because rumor has it that if you take both feet off of the stairs, you're stuck here forever. It turns out it's not just a rumor. There were 5 of us before. We had tried so many times to find this place. My sister and I were fascinated by the stories, as were a few of our friends, and wanted to see if it was real. Most of us were curious, but my sister Maddie, she was straight up obsessed. If we found it, we weren't going to actually go in. Maddie'd promised me. We tried several times before, but we were successful a few days ago. We went to the top floor of Keith's dorm and went down so many flights. But eventually, somewhere around the 4th floor, where the 4th floor should have been, we finally found it. Rows upon rows of decaying clothes and random items greeted us. For as far as the eye could see, the weak overhead lighting only illuminated so far in the distance. After that, it was just blackness, but you could feel the vastness from it. It was breathtaking, and not in a good way. A soft moan could be heard from just beyond the threshold, but we couldn't see the source. Maddie wanted to put her hand through, she said, to snap a picture. She did, and it came back a pixelated mess. She was disappointed and put one foot down onto the basement floor to lean in for a better shot. When nothing seemed to happen, she got bold and put both feet down. She turned around to grin at us, but the smile instantly left her face and was quickly replaced by what seemed to be a mix of fear and confusion. Her eyes widened and darted back and forth as she searched around frantically. She called out, and I waved my hands and yelled to her. I was just inches from her, but when I reached out, I couldn't touch her. She didn't seem to hear or see us, but she seemed to catch a glimpse at the source of the moaning. I'm not sure what she saw, but whatever it was, the sight of it caused her to take off running with an expression of pure terror on her face. I could sometimes see her as she ran through the lit portions, but none of us could see exactly what she was actually running from. Angie, Keith, Sky, and I went in after her. Mary ran back up the stairs. That's good. That means Mary probably survived. That was a while ago, a couple of days. Now it's just me and the quiet footsteps that follow me through the aisles. You know, it's funny. I used to think that the scariest thing in the world would be being chased by something that's just a bit faster than you. You turn back and you see it coming, but you just can't outrun it. But I've since found from recent experience that what's actually scarier is something you don't need to run after you. Because you can keep going and going and going, but eventually you'll run out of energy or become cornered. And it knows that. You just hear the slow, deliberate, wet slap of bare flesh on the linoleum. It doesn't have to run. Eventually you'll fall, and it'll take you. Distance doesn't seem to help. It approached me from directions that I would have thought impossible. Once it was far behind me and then suddenly pursuing me from the front. That was the one time I saw it. Just a glimpse of details as it emerged into a dimly lit portion of the aisle. I hope I never see it again. I'm still holding out hope that dehydration gets me first. You can't tell day from night down here. There are no windows, just weakly flickering fluorescent lights in some areas, and a darkness unlike anything I've seen before in others. It's disorienting and makes it so easy to imagine what could be lurking in the shadows, just out of sight. I'm grateful I have my phone with me. Before now, I just used to check the time or illuminate pitch black areas and turned it off to conserve the battery. But when it finally sunk in that I was never leaving, I started writing this. It's been comforting in a way. The store is massive. It's got tens of miles, if not more. I've ran and walked off and on for days, and I've yet to find the end. I've stopped calling out for my sister or our friends. Not because I've lost hope in finding them, but because I know something else already did. At first, I'd been relieved when those footsteps finally veered off in a different direction and began to fade into the distance. I was so grateful for the chance to stop and rest that I didn't even think about what it meant at the time, until I heard the screams. Far enough away that there was no way I could help, but close enough for me to hear everything. As bad as the screams are, the sounds that come after the screaming stops are always far worse. New people seem to join me from time to time. Sometimes I hear them. Once or twice I've seen them. I guess they took both feet off the stairs as well. I wonder where they came from. My town? Or somewhere else entirely? But we're never close enough to ask, and I'd never risk shouting here. I've been down here long enough now that I've started noticing certain things, and the more I notice these details, the more they unnerve me. For example, the store and items within it seem to just grow and grow. For everyone that disappears down here, the store seems to grow just a bit bigger. The clothes and housewares I've ran past, if you take a really close look, you'll see that they aren't quite right looking. The textures are all wrong. They aren't made of fabric or plastic or metal. Everything in here is made of something else, something more familiar. Now that I'm looking, I've noticed that these clothes seem to sigh with something like resignation under my touch. It's never truly silent down here. I've developed a theory. Maybe I'm just losing my mind, but I'm starting to suspect that there's no such thing as death down here. Maybe just deconstruction and remaking. I'm worried that I may find out very soon. I'm so tired. I don't even have the energy to sit upright, much less continue onward. I hear the sharp sound of hangers slowly sliding on metal as it searches for me under the racks of clothing. I hear the footsteps far too close for comfort. I'm hoping that in sharing this, it will encourage more caution in others, and maybe prevent a few thrill seekers from following in our footsteps. If you find that a perfectly ordinary trip down some stairs suddenly leaves you staring into this dark expanse, please Just go back where you came from and don't look back. Please don't take both feet off the stairs. Fair enough. I like this one. Right out the gate, that's such a bummer, OP. That being said, when the monster finally does catch up with you, what item of clothing would you prefer to be turned into? I personally would love to be a jacket. I know there are going to be a lot of perverts that say, I want to be a thong or bikini or something. I hope some 800-pound sweaty man wears you just because you're that fucking pitiful. Anyway, this has been the 2 newest posts of no sleep content. There's always something weird going on Reddit. And honestly, I'm having a hell of a good time discovering those things. Narrating them for you. Being a jackass. All that good shit. So, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.